Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another one of my Outlander videos. So let's first agree to one thing. We're going to try this time around to be nicer in the comments. We're going to be talking to one another rather than talking at the creator of this video or other commenters who disagree with us. A little maturity is gonna go a long way here. Now let's also agree that a review is not about recapping the episode and stating what others want to hear. Oh, this was so good, I love that scene where he did this. Or, oh, this was so perfect, I love that scene where she did that. In case some of us didn't get the memo, a review is an opinion statement on a piece or body of work. Now, my review of the 4th episode of the 3rd season of Outlander was seemingly very controversial. Some people didn't agree with me with respect. We discussed they still didn't agree with me, to each their own. It really went smooth. Some others agreed with me from the get-go, that was even smoother. And I had discussions with others for hours where we ended up in sort of middle grounds where we agreed on some parts of each other's opinions. That was still smooth. The rest though, which is sadly the majority, found it easier to try and demolish the review and not argue against the opinion. I really found zero admiration for how some people automatically think that by reading the books their opinion is right. I read the books all the way up to the 4th, and I don't care to state it 10 times on each video of mine, or feel that it makes me automatically the sole owner of the only good opinion out there. My opinion on the issue with the season are not about whether or not they're 100% true to the number of pages of the book dealing with one character or the other. It's not about who read and who didn't read the books. And it's most definitely not about whether or not Joe Abernathy or anyone else is present all that much in Voyager, the novel. It is instead about the concept of a television adaptation of the book. And reading through those comments, it didn't seem we all realized that a TV adaptation is not a book, and a book is not a TV adaptation. Now first off, I do respect everyone's opinion, and I don't really care if your opinion is different than mine. Everyone is definitely entitled to their own opinions. You could just go, dude, I disagree with you and so, and I'd be like, but I think this, and you'd be like, but I think that, and I'd be like, to each his own. We would then both go our separate ways without being aggressive to one another. What I find unacceptable though is some people's belief they can bully someone out of their opinion by talking at that person in their attempt to make their opinion worthless, rather than actually arguing against the opinion. And to answer a very important question that was put out there in the comments, you encourage people to comment on your videos, yet you don't like them disagreeing with you. Not really. I'm okay with people disagreeing with me, I just don't accept an opinion presented in a condescending manner, and I most definitely don't care how many subs I lose or never gain because of that. But circling back to television adaptations, they're definitely a tricky thing. Things that fly in books cannot fly in TV series, and things that fly in TV series cannot fly in books. They are definitely two different mediums of presenting a body of work, but two that require different approaches. Now as a direct result, thinking they're the same or treating them like there's no difference between the two is like saying a text message, a phone call, a video conference, and a face-to-face meeting are all one and the same. Heads up, they're not. You conduct yourself differently in each and every one of those. Just for the sake of simplicity, you could write a text message to your boss while you're naked. You could have a phone call with your boss while you're naked. You could have a video conference with your boss sitting, no pants or skirt on, but you definitely have a top or a shirt. But if you're gonna go to the office, meet your boss face to face, you're definitely gonna be fully dressed. Now with a book, for example, the descriptions are very important. How people look, how places look and feel, what are the surroundings, who was in the room, who was out of the room, and the list goes on and on. With a television or movie adaptation, on the other hand, most of this goes visual, and you need less descriptions and more dialogue. With a book, you could just have a character for moments and just ignore him or her for the rest of the book, and mostly readers wouldn't care. They could just live with reading a page or 10 or 100 less in a zillion page book. The character then becomes trivial. But the concept of triviality of characters does not apply in exactly the same manner to TV series. To begin with, you should think of the fact that a TV series is presented to both book readers and non-book readers. A character like Joe Abernathy, for example. Now his build-up is not just about him, but about Claire as well. She's gonna be almost 20 years older when she reunites with Jamie. And that's kind of a lot. 20 years are a lot. 20 years should change people, be it positively or negatively. So let me pose a question here. What is it that changes people? What is it that enriches their characters? Well, such a change comes from events in their lives over the course of such a time span, and the people they've dealt with as well. A time of extreme racism and male chauvinism should not really be brushed over so fast on a TV adaptation. Such a major issue should not be used to make Claire look good on her first day of medical school because she sat next to the underdog. It is a major issue, and like it or not, it still plagues societies worldwide with very few exceptions. Almost none, actually. So let's take a look at what exploring Jo Abernathy would have done. First and foremost, it would have explored Claire even further, her struggles as a female in a male-dominated world, what made her the stronger woman she becomes out of all of this. Number 2, her struggle would have gone hand in hand with the struggles of Jo, explaining how she made a stand for both him and her. Number 3, the show in its entirety would have taken a stand against things that, as I mentioned, are supposed to be unacceptable in today's world, yet plague a shit ton of societies. But finally, the showrunners would have delivered on the fuss and the epic description they gave Jo Abernathy during the long break of the show. Now, was it gonna be boring if they did that? Possibly yes, but it's just a distant possibility. In my personal opinion, it would have been as boring as developing Talisa Stark on Game of Thrones, a character that should be considered trivial by the standards of some commenters. But Talisa wasn't really boring at all, was she? There was a good story to be told, and it made perfect sense all the way through. And the character will be remembered as a very interesting one on Game of Thrones, and so will Una Chaplin for her portrayal there. Now on the 4th episode, a woman died. A trivial woman. That being Geneva. But was she really trivial? Well, she's the mother of Jaime's son, which takes away from the triviality concept. But there were a few scenes there in which she bore this extreme resemblance to Claire, in terms of looks and character. She was a stubborn woman to an extent, she was wild in a way. There was this one scene where both her hairdo and the look on her face made her look so much like Claire. Now, do you have any idea how much capitalizing on that would have added to Jaime's arc? I guess a lot. Yes, I do realize we all know he still misses and cares for Claire, so do take your fingers off your keyboard. I can see you writing that comment there. But to deviate from the books for a moment and present us with a Geneva that he kinda likes just because of that would have done a lot. But a lot of you are waiting for the reunion and the print-shop scene, and that's all that matters to you. I kind of understand that, can't say that I fully do. But let's even ignore all of that. I'm bad and I'm wrong. I don't know shit about how Geneva and Jo should have been portrayed. But can you honestly tell me that getting rid of Frank Randall, the way they did it, was a good decision? You know what I mean here, us seeing him dead only at the morgue and again, just for us to hear Claire's good words and have her glorified. Tobias Menzies was one of the cornerstones of this show for over 2 seasons, both as Jack Randall and as Frank Randall. And it would have been way better if the show gave him his proper goodbye. And he could have been a serial flying monkey in the books for all I care. On the show, he was a guy who was put in a very terrible situation. But believe it or not, it would have been a touching scene watching him drive to his death with all his thoughts in his head, all the memories flooding, and the look on his face. And it would have been totally worth it. Now, on another note, someone claimed on my review of the premiere of Outlander that Outlander deserves Game of Thrones-like status. Now, I'm not going to totally agree with that, even though that would piss off some people, but I'm not agreeing simply because they're not even in the same genre, let alone that Game of Thrones is my favorite show of all time. But I'm going to say this, Season 1 and 2 were as close as the show will ever get to that, and they were decently close. Season 3, not so much though. Don't get me wrong though, Outlander is the best in the romance genre out there. I can never argue against that. But what I could definitely argue against is a claim that it is the best it could be. But if we really believe it deserves that kind of status, then we need to remember that one of the best things about Game of Thrones, and as I mentioned earlier, is that no character is considered trivial. Every single character who leaves as much as a fingerprint on that story is important, and that is why it engages you all the way through, with the exception of course of a couple of episodes on Season 7. Now those were actually less engaging, and only because they didn't take their sweet time developing the story there. And surprisingly enough, back then I defended those episodes as much as people are defending Outlander Season 3 so far. But to make a long story short, when you review something on an episode-by-episode basis, it means it's worth the review. And when you criticize such a piece of work, you criticize it because you think it has greater potential. Especially when you're doing this as a hobby, you don't really care about feeding people what they want to hear. So the thing is, if you're watching a fine piece of work and you see room for it being finer, you want it to get there. You're not really bitching when you state something is missing, especially when you mention a con or a disappointment amidst all the pros to said season so far. And if you just can't listen to constructive criticism of an episode or 4 episodes of a season of a TV series, then reviews are not for you. And I don't really care what critics say about the series or the season so far. It is called an opinion. You're entitled to yours, and I'm entitled to mine. But with that being said, let me know in mature, polite comments what you thought of what I had to present here. But on the other hand, if you did like this video, feel free to slap it a much appreciated like, subscribe, and enable notifications. And until I see you next time, thank you all for tuning in, and have a good one.